Hey, what is going on guys? RvzStealth here, and in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at one of the most sleeper OP champions for patch 6.21, and as you can tell by the background gameplay, it's going to be AP Kogmaw. So right now, AP Kogmaw is super underrated and really strong in the mid lane, and I'm going to go into detail in this video as to why I think he's a great pick right now. I did have him on my best underrated list a few patches ago, but I honestly think he's like even stronger now after some of the changes he got this patch to his ultimate. So if you guys do not know, his ultimate did get pretty heavily buffed this patch. The damage on it went up, the cooldown, or not the cooldown, the mana cost went down on it. So overall, like buffs all around to Kogmaw's ultimate, and that's a really big buff to AP Kogmaw. At first I thought it would be a pretty good buff to AD Kogmaw, and I wasn't really thinking about AP Kogmaw, but honestly these buffs do benefit AP Kogmaw a lot more because his poke damage now with his ultimate and the amount of damage that his ultimate will do is just really strong. Alright, so first off here, we're going to go into detail about why Kogmaw is a pretty strong pick, and then after that I'm going to talk about the runes, masteries, and the build for Kogmaw, as well as a few tips for him. So Kogmaw is a strong pick right now in my opinion because of those buffs to his ultimate, and also because he provides some of the best wave clear for any mid lane champion. His E ultimate combo can one-shot a wave, and once you do get your Luden's Echo as well and a few AP items, it's really hard to siege against a Kogmaw. The fact that he is one of the longest range mid lane champions in the game makes it very easy for him to just sit back. If the enemies are like pushing your tower, you can just sit back at a very safe distance and wave clear with your ultimate and your E. He's also got burst and sustain damage. Now, when a champion has both of these in the mid lane, it usually means that they are pretty strong picks. So for example, when Malzahar was really strong, or even right now, he's still a pretty strong pick, he's got a lot of burst damage, yet he's still got sustain damage, which makes him a very versatile pick, and you don't really have to rely on that like one burst combo in a team fight to be effective. You're always going to be useful like with Kogmaw in a team fight because you can constantly throw out ultimates. Your EQ combo, once you have a little bit of AP, which you'll see in the background gameplay here at some point, can absolutely one-shot squishy targets. People just don't expect the damage that you're going to do with AP Kogmaw, which is another great reason to why you should pick him in the mid lane. As long as you have a general idea of how to play AP Kogmaw and what you're doing on the champion, then you're going to have the advantage in most matchups because the enemies just are never going to know how much damage you're going to do at what point in the game unless like AP Kogmaw becomes like really meta or something. But because he's rarely played, you are going to find yourself doing pretty well on him and definitely find yourself surprising enemy champions with how much damage you do. AP Kogmaw is also one of the best champions if you do get ahead with him because his poke and his siege is just really strong. His ultimate's long range allows him to easily siege down towers, and if you do get just the slightest of leads in the early game or the slightest lead in the early game, then you can look to group with your team. The enemies really won't be able to do too much against you because if they stay in range to try to clear out the minions and try to clear the minion range, then they will be in range of your ultimate, and sometimes they'll be in range of your E as well. So it's just very easy for you to hit them with your ultimate, poke them down, and take towers. Now, a few weaknesses to him though are that he is very skill shot reliant. His E, his Q, and his ultimate are all skill shots, so he does take a little bit of practice to get used to, and I would definitely recommend if you're newer to Kogmaw, definitely pick up Rylai's on him. Not all Kogmaw players do go for Rylai's, but I don't see why you wouldn't. I feel like it's just such a strong item on him because if you can hit that first ultimate or that first E or Q, then it's going to be very easy for you to follow up with your ultimates again and just constantly keep slowing them and keep doing damage. So especially if you're newer to Kogmaw, pick up the Rylai's as like your second or third item, and even if you are experienced on AP Kogmaw, I would probably still recommend it. And another con is that he is a little bit weaker against assassins, but this one goes for pretty much any AP mage in the game anyways. Taking a look at the build now for AP Kogmaw, it is very unique and it's quite a lot different than what a lot of the meta mid lane champions build. The standard build that you're going to want to run most games on him is going to look like this. So it's going to be Stork Boots, Luden's Echo, Rylai's, Archangel Staff, Liandry's, and Void Staff. Those are the main items that you're going to want to take most games on him. You really don't want to interchange any of them. Like, I wouldn't recommend going a Rabadon's on AP Kogmaw just because he doesn't scale very well with ability power. You want to be focusing on going for that magic pen and get as much magic pen as possible. So the Stork Boots early on are very important, and you want to go for like a Void Staff or a Liandry's pretty early on as well. You usually want to get your Ludens and your Rylai's as your first two items, and then as your third item, you generally don't want to end up getting your Archangel Staff. You usually want to get some magic pen in there, get either the Void Staff or the Liandry's depending on the situation, and then usually you do want to get your Archangels upgraded as your last item. Unless you are getting caught out a lot as Kogmaw and you really need the shield from the Archangel, then you want to get that last and try to get the magic pen as soon as possible from the Void Staff and the Liandry's. Now let's quickly talk about ability maxing here for those of you guys who are unsure of what to max on AP Kogmaw. So you want to go for maxing your E first on Kogmaw. This is going to give him a lot of wave clear and a lot of AoE damage like in team fights. You want to go E first, Q second, and then W last, and of course taking your ultimate whenever you can. You don't want to max out W on AP Kogmaw because you're really not going to be auto attacking too much with AP Kogmaw, and therefore your W really isn't going to come into use very often. Now, as for the runes on AP Kogmaw, it does depend on the matchup. If you're going up against an AP mid lane champion, then you can go for Magic Pen Marks, you can go for some Magic Resist Glyphs, you can go Health per level Seals, and then Ability Power Quints. If you are going up against like an AD champion as well as the enemy team has a few AP champions, then you can just go for the standard page of getting the Magic Pen Marks, some Magic Resist Glyphs, Armor Seals, and then AP Quints. It does really just depend on the matchup. You can also go for like ability power per level glyphs if you're feeling like really safe and you're really confident on your Kogmaw, but generally I would recommend getting some like magic resist or some armor in there because he is a fairly squishy champion, and if you do get caught out and you don't have any magic resist or armor from your runes, then you're gonna get bursted down really quickly. Now, as for the masteries on AP Kogmaw, I would definitely recommend taking the Thunderlords as your keystone mastery. Taking this just allows you to get a lot of burst damage off very quickly, and it's also very easy to proc on AP Kogmaw. If you use your EQ and then get your ultimate off, then you're going to proc that Thunderlords. A lot of people also do take the Deathfire. I'm not exactly too sure which one is better. Most people and most of the Kogmaw or most of the AP Kogmaw mains do take the Thunderlords, but I could also see the Deathfire not being too bad on him because in that tree you also do get a little bit of magic pen if you do end up taking the Deathfire, so that can also help out Kogmaw quite a bit. And then the Deathfire can also be pretty good like with your ultimate as well, so I'm not completely sure which one is better, but most AP Kogmaw mains do take the Thunderlords. And lastly, to round out this video, let's take a look at a few tips now for AP Kogmaw. So my first tip is going to be to don't die in the laning phase. It's very important when you are playing AP Kogmaw to just farm your tier, to just make sure you keep up in farm in the laning phase, and just make sure that you can get to your mid game power spike. If you end up dying in the laning phase, then you are going to be very weak as AP Kogmaw. He's a very weak champion if you do fall behind with him, so just make sure you are farming up. Don't try to go for like stupid trades in the laning phase, especially pre-6. You're probably not going to end up winning an all-in because your all-in damage really isn't that great until you do get a few AP items. So just play a little bit more passive on him in the laning phase, get to your items, and then you can start doing work with him. My next tip is to use your ultimate on normal cast if you're new to AP Kogmaw or if you're not sure of the range that his ultimate does have. I found that when I was playing AP Kogmaw, I was kind of underestimating the range of his ultimate, and I didn't realize until like the mid to late game how long range it actually is. So if you are just trying him for the first time, then maybe try your ultimate on normal cast, get used to that range, and then once you are used to the range, you can put it on quick cast. My next tip is to not take your E at level 1 every time. You really don't want to take the same thing at level 1 every time as Kogmaw in the mid lane. It does depend on the matchup. So if you are going up against a mid lane champion that is looking to poke you down at level 1, I would recommend starting your W. Your W will allow you to farm from a safe distance, and it will limit the amount of poke the enemies can get off on you. If you are going up against a less potent like level 1 champion in the mid lane, then you can start E and you can try to either like shove the wave, or you can poke them with your E at level 1. My next tip is to never go in auto attack range in a team fight when you are playing as Kogmaw. He is one of the longest range AP mid lane champions, so use that to your advantage. Use the fact that you do have Rylai's to kite, and use the fact that your ultimate is one of the longest ranged abilities in the game, and just stay back in a team fight. Don't go into auto range. If you go into auto range, then you're just kind of playing him way too aggressively. You want to be sitting back with Kogmaw, just trying to get poke off whenever you can, and that's how you're going to be most successful on the champion. Now lastly, let's just take a look at the secondary summoner spell that you're going to want to run on AP Kogmaw. Now obviously take Ghost as your primary summoner spell. You want to take that on most champions in the game, but as for your second one, it does depend on the situation. So if you are going up against an enemy team comp that doesn't have too many assassins but are also pretty skill shot reliant, then I would recommend taking Ghost as your secondary summoner spell. I like Ghost on most of my mid lane champions, at least recently. It just allows you to stay really mobile in team fights. It allows you to kite even better, and it just allows you to just not get caught out as often. I feel like taking barrier on AP Kogmaw, it's okay, but I don't feel like it's the best, just because if you do get caught out like by a Thresh Hook or a Morgana Bind, barrier's really not going to save you, especially like in a mid to late game team fight. Whereas taking that Ghost, it will allow you to dodge those skill shots, and it will very easily allow you to reposition in a team fight. Now if the enemy team does have a lot of assassins and they have a lot of dive champions, then I would take Exhaust in that situation. It will just allow you to stay alive in team fights and survive if those champions are trying to dive on you. So that is going to be all for this video, guys. Be sure to let me know down in the comment section below if or when you do play AP Kogmaw. When I did try him out, I did play him in a ranked game actually, and I ended up going like 22-4 or 23-4 or something crazy like that. And that was my first time playing AP Kogmaw in at least a few months. I wouldn't recommend like first timing him in ranked if you've never played AP Kogmaw before, but if you have played him in the past, he's a pretty simple like mid lane champion to pick up on. He's definitely not one of the hardest. He is skill shot reliant, but once you can get your Rylai's, it's pretty easy to hit your skill shots, and it's pretty easy to be successful on him. So thanks for watching, guys. I hope you all have an awesome day. Subscribe if you have not already, and I will see you in my next video.